So we've been talking about like the polarization, and what we're going to look at is after Kansas, Nebraska, we really see that our people butting heads. The pro-slavery forces are going out there and beating up people. We see that the free soilers and the abolitionists are going out there as well. Even in the halls of Congress, we have people having feuds. But now what we're going to look at is the birth of the Republican Party. We're going to see the Republicans will meet in Philadelphia and nominate their first candidate. The Republican Party platform will set itself against the extension of slavery in the territory. So what would I put that, north or south? North or south? Against the extension of slavery in the territories. This is the north, right? They're against the extension of slavery into the territories. And many people get confused. Many people think Abraham Lincoln is an abolitionist. No. All Abraham Lincoln is against is the extension of slavery into the territories. So what two parties have I talked about before that would jump into the Republican Party? The Whigs and the Free Soilers. The Democrats endorse popular sovereignty. The Southerners will make violent threats, that should have an A, that if the Republican was elected, it would be a declaration of war and will force them to secede. Whose side do I put that on? The South, okay? So many Northerners anxious to save the Union and their profitable business connections with the South were intimidated into voting for Buchanan. So Buchanan will be our last president before the Civil War. And many Northerners pick him just because they're fearful that who is going to lead? The South. So the next thing is the Dred Scott decision. We're going to see Dred Scott is actually a black slave who lived with his master for 5 years in Illinois and Wisconsin territories. Backed by the interested of abolitionists, he sued for his freedom on the basis of living in free soil. This will then go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that Dred Scott was a black slave and not a citizen. Hence, he cannot sue in the federal courts. The case should be over, right? Mm-hmm. But because the Supreme Court is held by the Southerners, under the leadership of Chief Justice Taney, the court decreed that because he was a slave, he was private property. He or she could be taken into any territory legally held there in slavery. Who does that side for, north or south? This is the South, that he declared that a slave was private property. They could be legally held there in slavery. This is really important because now he's my private property. I have a slave. Can I go to Massachusetts and live there now with my slave? Mm-hmm. Can Massachusetts take away my slave? Mm-hmm. Even though Massachusetts is a free state, I can still have slaves in Massachusetts. Who does this favor? So no matter where you are, if you're in the north, you're in the south, you're on vacation, you're in another nation, can you still have your property? Yes. So he basically uses the Fifth Amendment. Congress cannot deprive people of their property. So does it matter the sectional balance anymore? No. Does popular sovereignty matter? No. So the Southerners, how do you think they're going to feel about this? They're delighted. They're happy. The Southerners are delighted with this unexpected victory. Champions of popular sovereignty are aghast. We see Douglas is now and host of Northern Democrats. Another legal wedge has been thrust between the North and the South wing of the once united Democratic Party. Northern Democrats, so this is what we're going to put in the north, on the north side. Northern Democrats support popular sovereignty. So now our Democratic Party is divided. Does this allow for a third party to come in and win? Now that the Democrats are divided, will they be united in 1860? And this is what allows for Lincoln to win. The difference of opinion on how we're going to account for slaves. Okay. So the Republicans will be infuriated with the Dred Scott setback. They now insisted that the ruling of the court was merely an opinion and not a decision binding the majority of the Supreme Court were Southerners. So how does the North feel about this decision? Should they be enforced? Southerners were inflamed by this defiance. They began to wonder how much longer could they remain joined to a section that refused to honor the Supreme Court. Again, are they seeing eye to eye and coming together? Isn't North saying, okay, you're right, that is your property, you should have it? No, they are further being pulled apart by this stuff that is happening 10 years prior to the Civil War. The Panic of 1857. What caused the panic? An inpouring of gold played a part by helping inflate the currency. Okay? We're going to see the demands of the Crimean War in Russia overstimulated the growing of grain. What area of America, north, west, or south, grows the grain? The West. While frenzied speculation in land and railroads, where is that? North, west, or south? West. Had further ripped the economic fabric. When the collapse came, over 5,000 businesses. Where are my businesses? In the north. So where did this panic affect? The north and the west. Failed within a year. Unemployment accompanied by hunger meetings in urban areas was widespread. The north, including its grain growers, were hardest hit. The south enjoyed favorable cotton prices abroad and rode out the storm with flying colors. Panic conditions seemed further proof that cotton was king and his economic kingdom was stronger than that of the north. This fatal delusion helped derive the overconfident Southerners closer to a shooting showdown. So the panic, what impact did this have on the South? They could what? What's up with their economy? Cotton was stronger than that of the North. What else did they believe? This overconfidence, right? They kind of now have do they have the courage to leave? Yes, right? They have the courage that they could be what? Independent. The financial distress in the North, especially in the agriculture, grew new vigor for a demand for free farms. They're going to now demand free farms. Does the South like that? No, because is 160 acres enough for slave labor? No. Are they seeing different things? The South is now saying, what, should we stay or should we go?
Go.
Thank you. We should go. Can I go to the next one? Okay. So in the Illinois senatorial election of 1858, now claimed the national spotlight. We know this guy, Stephen Douglas. Remember, what was he trying to build?
Railroad.
A railroad. And he introduced a very dangerous idea in Kansas. Do y'all remember what that idea was? That people get to choose. What was that idea? Popular sovereignty. His term was about to expire, and the Republicans decided to run a rustic Springfield lawyer, Abraham Lincoln, against him. Lincoln, a Republican nominee for the Senate seat, boldly challenged Douglas to a series of joint debates. Douglas accepted Lincoln's challenge. In 7 meetings, the famed Lincoln-Douglas debates were arranged. A famous debate came in Freeport, Illinois, where Lincoln impaled his opponent on the horns of the dilemma. Suppose, he inquired, that if the people of the territory should vote slavery down, the Supreme Court ruled in Dred Scott's decision decreed that they could not. Who would prevail, the court or the people? Douglas's reply became the Freeport Doctrine. No matter how the Supreme Court ruled, Douglas argued slavery would stay down if the people voted it down. Douglas defeated Lincoln for the seat. So what's popular with Douglas? Popular sovereignty or Dred Scott? Popular sovereignty. Douglas's loyalty to popular sovereignty still had a popular appeal in Illinois. But Douglas, in winning Illinois, hurt his own chances of winning the presidency, which further split the Democratic Party. The Northern Democrats, so this is what I'm going to put on the North, they support popular sovereignty, while the Southern Democrats support Dred Scott. So when they try to elect Douglas for the presidency of the Democratic Party, are the Southern Democrats going to elect him? No, because he supports what? Popular sovereignty. So Lincoln, however, he doesn't win this seat. But we're going to see he was playing for larger stakes than just the senatorship. Although defeated, he had shambled into the national limelight. Lincoln began to emerge as a potential Republican nominee for the president. Right? Are they seeing eye to eye on this? This then sets the stage for who to win the presidency in 1860 because Douglas has adopted popular sovereignty. Lincoln. Okay, so the next one is John Brown. John Brown, we saw him in Kansas. Do y'all remember what he was doing in Kansas? He hacked to death a couple of people, right? Well, we're going to see him again in Harper's Ferry. John Brown, a grim figure of bleeding Kansas, now hatched a new scheme to invade the South, and secretly with a handful of followers, he would call upon the slaves to rise up and furnish them with firearms. So he's doing his own slave rebellion here, right? Mm-hmm. Brown secured several $1,000s for firearms from northern abolitionists and finally arrived in West Virginia with some 20 men and some blacks. At Harper's Ferry, he seized the federal arsenal and in October 1859 killing 7 innocent people, including a free black, and injuring 10 or so more. But the slaves, largely ignorant of Brown's strike, failed to rise, and Brown and his band were quickly captured. So was he successful? No. The effects of Harper's Ferry were inflammatory. In the eyes of the South, already embittered, the Brown was a wholesale murderer and an apostle of treason. Many Southerners asked how they could possibly remain in a union with a murderous gang of abolitionists, were financing armed bands to brown them. Many Southerners naturally concluded that the violent abolitionist views were shared by the entire North, dominated by Brown-loving Republicans. So what's the South view of this?
What's the thing called?
What's the South's view? What are some things that we could say here from this thing?
Murderous gang of abolitionists.
Okay, everybody in the North, right? They're murderous gang of abolitionists. The
Treason.
Union, he's a traitor, right? What else would they say about this? The North is dominated by Brown-loving Republicans, right? He's an apostle of treason. Do they like Brown? No. They think everybody in the North's like him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do they want to stay?
No.
I'm going to erase this because we're going to go on. What do you think the North's going to view him as?
A hero.
Hero. Alright. So let's look at the next one. Abolitionists and other ardent free soilers were infuriated by his execution. Many of them were ignorant of his bloody past and outraged because the Virginians were hanging such an earnest reformer. On this day of the execution, the free soil centers in the North tolled bells, fired guns, lowered flags, and held rallies. Some spoke of St. John Brown, and the serene Ralph Waldo Emerson compared the new martyr hero with Jesus. How do they view him?
Jesus.
Right? He's a saint, right? St. John Brown, he's a martyr hero with Jesus, right? They also say that he's a reformer, an earnest reformer. Okay, are we looking at this guy in two different lenses?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which one's the one that's looking at him with rose-petaled lenses?
Yeah.
Okay, which one's inflamed at him? The South. Again, do y'all get the analysis of how they're looking at this very same event through two different lenses? So the last thing is the election of Lincoln. Lincoln became a minority president, 60% of the voters preferred some other candidate. He was, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be funny. It kind of was. He was a sectional president for 10 southern states where he was not allowed to be on the ballot. He polled no popular votes. The election of 1860 was virtually 2 elections, one in the north and one in the other in the south. South Carolina rejoiced over Lincoln's victory. They now had their excuse to secede. So what do I put for the south? Secession, secede. In winning the north, Lincoln had split the south. So they're going to secede. But tragic chain of reaction of secession began to erupt. South Carolina, which threatened to go out if the sectional Lincoln came in, was good as his word. 4 days after the election of the Illinois baboon, South Carolina called a special convention to vote to secede. During the next 6 weeks, 6 other states of the lower South followed. Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas joined to create the Confederate States of America. So what's the other thing? Secession and what? Confederate States of America. Okay, there's no reaction from the North because the Northern's reaction, which we'll get to in the Civil War,